Hello, my name is John Smego. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm making a series of videos where I like to talk different subjects about God, and it gives me opportunity. I'm not able to get out of the house uh, very well. I have a lot of physical problems. I'm a disabled veteran, so I'm not able to go to church as much. So I started a project of writing these videos and writing down my studies and taking my notes and making a series of videos just to talk about God to other people. And the topic I want to talk about in this video, just a small short video, is the what was the Tower of Babel? So just to give a little knowledge about the Tower of Babel, we hear the story in the Old Testament. So I'll start out with the story out of the Bible, what the Tower of Babel was, and then we'll get in more in depth about. I got a couple cats here running around. I got some pets that love to play, so I get crazy. Excuse me, fighting a cold, so that time of the year. In Genesis 11, chapter 11, verses 1 through 9, and the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime that they made for mortar. And they said, Go, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and therefore confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore it is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad on the face of all the earth. So you have right after the flood, this is the 10th chapter of, 11th chapter of Genesis. So it's shortly after the flood, there talks about where these people were disobedient. They gathered in one area instead scattered like God told them to do, and decided to stay in one spot. Now I'm going to talk more about that, but right now I'm going to explain to understand, excuse me, about the tower and the people. Is to understand their leader, or the one who was considered their king. His name was Nimrod. Genesis chapter 10, verses 8 through 10. And Cush began Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord, in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So he started in Babel and made the city and area there, and then he went to Erech and Akkad and Calneh. Nimrod is the son of Cush, the grandson of Ham, and great-grandson of Noah. So he's 1, 2, 3 generations after Noah. And realize at this time, Noah's still alive when Nimrod was born. I have a lineage thing in a different video where I explain the time, and I believe, I could be wrong. I should have done that for the video to make sure if Nimrod was alive or when he was born, Noah died. If he was alive, it was just a short period of time. But obviously he knew Ham and he knew Cush, because at that time, man's age was dwindling down because of sin. Before, you lived hundreds and hundreds of years. Now slowly the atmosphere is different. Everything's changed. We have more disease. We have more radiation against our bodies. Everything. So much of just battling our bodies that excuse me, sore throat. That man was not living as long. But it talks about being a mighty one. When it speaks in the Bible about mighty one, these are men of great strength and doing mighty deeds. There's a statue near Babylon that actually shows him holding a lion. I believe Nimrod, and there's other references to Nimrod being a giant. We still had some, giant people after the flood and throughout the Old Testament, where I explained in another video about the fighting, there was 36 different tribes of giants. So they weren't as big as the giants pre-flood, but there were still giants of post-flood through DNA that was done. Now, there's certain books are used as reference that's talked about in the Bible, and one is the Book of Enoch, where we do authenticate the Book of Enoch because the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 30s, around 1939, 1940, around that time frames when we found the scrolls, and basically the scrolls was the Old Testament and the Book of Enoch. I'll be doing a video on the Dead Sea Scrolls, explain more about them. So we could authenticate most of the Book of Enoch. We also, as a reference, the Book of Jasher, but unfortunately, there's been so many different writings and copyings of the Book of Jasher that I don't authenticate it. There's a couple times I've spoken out of the Book of Jasher, but I do it very little. I don't see how accurate that could be. And Josephus' work was Josephus was a Jewish historian that worked for the Romans. He was not loved by the Romans because he was working for the Romans. Loved by Jewish people because he was working for the Romans. Excuse me. But we have his for authenticating things. So these are outside sources that are talked about in the Bible that we could use to authenticate different stories in the Bible. They're not part of the Bible. A lot of people are like, well, these are left out books. No, they weren't supposed to be part of the Bible. They're referenced to it, but they're not. They talk about Josephus. Well, he understands recorded history. He's a historian. He was not in the Bible, even though there's a lot of history in the Bible. He was not part of it, but he was an outside source. And Josephus' works in his book says, well, what he believed. Flavius Josephus, was his full name, believed that it was likely under this direction, Nimrod, that the building of Babel and its tower began. In addition to Josephus, this is also the view found in the Talmud and other midrash such as Genesis Rabbi. Several of these early Judaic sources also assert that the king Ephraim, who wars with Abraham later in Genesis, is none other than Nimrod himself. Remember the Tower of Babel, as I explained, and I read where God confounded the people and gave different languages. So therefore, that's the reason why there's a lot of times throughout the Old Testament, because Nimrod lived a long life. He was a very evil man. And he's referenced many times by different names throughout history, other sources, through archaeology, other writings. We find different references to him under different names, but they all mean the same person. I said Josephus wrote, that's a complete copy. Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and a contempt of God. He was a grandson of Ham, the son of Noah. Ham was the son of Noah. Nimrod was a bold man and of great strength of hand. Very strong, kind of like your strong men nowadays. I love to watch that. My father, who used to watch strongman competitions, he loved it. He persuaded them not to ascribe to God as if it were through his means they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured that happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God to bring them into a constant dependence on his power. We see that happening to our country today, where our parties are, my cats are over there fighting, and they're playing and they get to fight, and they're sisters. When we're getting to the point where we're going towards socialism in this country, and the fear of God's been taken out of our nation. That's just why judgment's coming to America. It's because God's been taken out of America. He also said he would be revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again. For that he would build a tower too high for the waters to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers. Now the multitude were very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod and to esteem it a piece of cowardice to submit to God. Incredible, the evil men. And they built a tower, neither sparing any pains nor begin in any degree negligent about the work. And by reason of the multitude of hands employed in it, it grew very high, sooner than anyone could expect. But the thickness of it was so great, and it was strongly built, that thereby it was great height seemed upon the view to be less than it really was. It was built of burnt brick, cemented together with mortar made of bitumen, that might be able to emit, that might not be liable to emit water. In other words, a waterproof tower. When God saw that they acted so madly, he did not resolve to destroy them utterly, since they were not grown wiser by the destruction of the former sinners. So God created the world, destroyed the world by a flood because it's such the horrible sin. It was getting to the point where people are so evil, they were cannibals. The giants were cannibals. All kinds of sexual sins going on. And man just was given over to a reprobate mind. And you would think, knowing this, obviously they knew Noah, and he knew that. Nimrod was building this tower to be defiant, saying, "Here, God, I'm going to build this tower, and you ain't going to kill me by flood." Incredible, the audacity. But he caused it atonement among them by producing in them diverse languages, and causing that through the multitude of these languages that they should not be able to understand one another. A place wherein they built the tower is now called Babylon, because of the confusion of that language, which they rarely understood before. For the Hebrews mean by the word Babel, confusion. I served we were boots on ground. We were in Kuwait like a week before we went to Iraq. Well, a few weeks. But we were in boots on ground February 18th, 2003. I'll never forget that date, because around March the 1st is when the war started. And my platoon, first 2 weeks once the war started, was rough because it was like 26 Scud missile attacks, so we survived. I hate the Scud missiles. At least shooting at me with small arms. I had my saw, my 249. I could shoot back, but the missiles, the mortar attacks, and geez, it just wasn't fun. But we were there till we got home in June of 2004. So we were there over a year, not quite 15 months, or something like that. In the country, one of the longest groups over there. Our unit kept get past. There's 3 or 4 times we packed to come back, and they was like, "No, I'm packed. You guys are staying. We're running missions." Some other groups coming back, and we were like, "Man, these are guys here 6 months, 9 months. We're here well over a year." So, unfortunately, that's the way it was for us. But I had an opportunity to one of the camps I stayed at, Camp Kazu, which was like 10 miles, between 10 and 15 miles from Babylon, and we went there a few times. I got to go to Babylon and enjoyed that. And one of the things we looked at, I got to meet an archaeologist there, and he showed me and one of my buddies where they thought the Tower of Babel was, this huge area, and just on the other side of because we got to go in Babylon, we got to go in where what they thought the throne room was, and they talked about writing on the wall and all that. And then we went underground, this area with wine cellars, and then it sent chills up my spine because I got this one area, and I was like, it was cold, so but still, something was just eerie about it, and then I thought about and asked him about, do you guys have an idea where Daniel and the lion's den was? And they was like, you're standing in the lion's den, what we believe was the lion's den, and it was way, it was underground, and you could see the slits up front, up top, and I was like, man, just to think that Daniel was down here at the pit of lions, and it was a blessing to me. It was a blessing because it helped kept our sanity through a war. I had my Bible with me. Everybody knew I had my Bible. Kept us through a lot of things. I've seen big tough men just break down and cry. Things they saw shaking up because you're getting shot at, bombed at. You drive down the road, you can blow up anything. It's just incredible. And it stays with you all your life. But we saw that. But we went over there in the area where this rebel was, and they believe that was where the Tower of Babel was. And I just want to speak that moment, talk about that. So I wondered what the language was spoken at first, because he created languages all over. So I looked at Genesis 2:19. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call him. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. The reason why I did this was because that's the first time we hear of Adam speaking. And something you look at all the animals species on the earth and think about Adam named them all. How smart he was. He was born a genius beyond. We have people, excuse me, Einstein. Of course, Einstein always talked about Nikola Tesla being the genius more than Einstein. But we talk about people that we consider genius today cannot compare to what Adam had. He was the first man created. What God gave him for a mind. It's incredible to think about it. And everything we think about, there's so many different lost civilizations we find all over through archaeology. It's like, I can't understand how they did this. Well, because they were smarter. They were not the cavemen dumb like they put out. They were smarter. And today we cannot copy some of the things that they've done. We're not able to. We're not capable of building a pyramid as good as what they got at Giza. Even today with our technology. Why? Because they were smarter than us. But people don't want to admit that. And so we talk about that. We call it the Adamek language. Is according to Jewish tradition, as recorded in the Midrashim and some Christians, the language spoken by Adam in the Garden of Eden is variously interpreted as either the language used by God to address Adam, the divine language. There's a language up in heaven. Some people call it angelic language, different things that we're not capable of speaking, or the language invented by Adam with which he named all things. Now, Adam being the way he was, he might have been able to, because he's born perfect. Then he was offered, and unfortunately sinned later. So was he able to understand how did God speak to him? I'm not sure. If he spoke to him one way, then after things change, we cannot know. I think that Adam spoke, because some people say, well, maybe he spoke Hebrew, an old form of Hebrew. I know a lot of places we talk about Adamek. Adamek is an older form of Arabic, like they speak. And that's not Adamek, that's Aramaic. Two different things. A lot of people think about maybe Hebrew. It actually was Hebrew because it's like a dead lemmings and the miracle of God brought it back. That they spoke Hebrew. We don't know. We'll find out later. There's a lot of questions. That's the reason why I do these videos. Just to sow that seed, to study, and just kind of, maybe get you thinking. And then later, when we see God, we'll know the truth of many things that come about. Now, I want to throw something in there I disagree with, but I put it out there anyway. There's a lot of people out there, because I do believe in ways to go to the spirit world. And I put this out and explain more about it. But there's been a lot of people saying the Tower of Babel was a portal to heaven. And they take two verses where they get this idea. Genesis 11:4. And they say, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose two may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, let us we scatter abroad upon the face of the earth. In other words, not be obedient to God, rebellious. And Genesis 11:6. And the Lord said, behold, the people was one, and they have all one language. And this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. So what was he trying to keep them from doing? And a lot of people, and I didn't write it down there because it's Islamic tradition, and there are 4 pages to write just that story. But basically, the story was that they built the tower, and that the tower went up to heaven. They actually fought, and then Allah destroyed it. So of course that's ungodly, not true. There's no Allah. Allah's Satan. And I say that. I have a lot of friends that are Muslim and dear to me, but I speak the truth. But the reason why I don't think it's a portal to heaven, or they were trying to make some kind of raise up to make like a portal to go to heaven, was because physical cannot enter the spirit world. We've been told that. We cannot, like when the rapture of the church takes place, we're going to have different bodies, glorified bodies. Thank goodness I get rid of this old thing. I hurt all the time and in a lot of pain, a lot of chronic pain. But I won't be in this body. I'll be in a different body that I could go to heaven. And we cannot go in front of God without Jesus dying for our sins, and so God could see us. He came back around sin. So this idea that a portal to heaven, I disagree with. I do think there's such thing as portals to the spirit world, because that's what they're meaning. Like everybody hears about the LHC, Large Hydrogen Collider, CERN near Switzerland. We talk about. I'm big about that. There's a lot of things that we dabble in that brings back in the last days all kinds of demons and things onto the earth, and that's how Satan does it. And we create things that brings it back. There's many ways to tap into the spiritual world. You could do it because the spiritual world's of the mind. And so we tap into that by doing hallucinating drugs. Native Americans have looked into the spirit world by using hallucinating drugs. I think you could look into the spirit world by doing extreme things, using extreme pain, bringing your body to the brink of death through fasting and other things. You can bring you towards a spiritual state. Portals, rituals. There's a lot of demonic rituals you can do that actually brings demons in. There's ways to bring things. So there's a way to get into the spirit world, but we're not meant to do that. That's why magic is so evil. Magic's not of this world. Magic's of the spiritual world. And so I wanted to go back and I researched to find out, because I always thought as a kid, well, he scattered, but he didn't say anything about destroying the tower. So who destroyed the Tower of Babel? I know Alexander the Great destroyed a ziggurat, by Babylon, called the Etamanaki in 331 BC. I don't know if that was the Tower of Babel that stayed all them years and then later he destroyed it. I don't think so, because it talks about how greatness of this tower was. I believe my second viewpoint is God destroyed the Tower of Babel after confusing the people. He destroyed the tower. He's not going to let that tower sit there. When it talks earlier in Genesis where they built the tower faster than they thought they would, he's not going to let it sit there and even if it was, if I understand the tower was built, even if the tower wasn't quite finished, it was built enough. Josephus talks about it. I don't believe that God would allow it to stay too much longer. But Josephus does talk about it. I could be wrong. He talked about it. So he had a way of knowing about the tower, as in physically, because he talks about the being of a great stature, the width being so strong. So I can only speculate, and I don't like to speculate. I like to know what I know and admit when I'm not sure about something. That way I'm more truthful in my speaking. And I think it's very important to speak about God, do things like this, but also to be honest with people and not try to sway. That's something I'm very big against. Thank you for listening to one of my videos. Hopefully you'll be interested in look at some more and do these studies and answer. You can always in comments give me a question if you find something in your studies. By all means, send me information where I can study more. And if we disagree, let's disagree. But I like to hear if you have a disagreement, why, so I can study and say, hey, because it may change what I look at things, or it may not. We're all belong to God, and we're all got that gift of God to study, and I don't go by absolutes. God bless you, and hope you have a great day.